around me, but their reviews didn't mention them. And I couldn't figure out why. I was talking to my brother about it one day at rehearsal, and our other guitar player, Mark, piped up, and he said, you know, the reason that these reviews keep mentioning you, and that you're doing your own interviews, is that it's not that you're the most technically proficient, it's not that you're the fastest, it's not that you're a perfect robot that never screws up, it's that you're making choices that the next guy probably wouldn't make. And when he said that, I kind of realized, for better or worse, that I was creating this unique voice that I had set out to create within the band. So this, and this was a song that had that kind of pointed me out. And so I think this song will always stick with me in that way. So again, for better or worse, I don't know, but I'm creating some sort of voice within this band. Yeah! So
here's you're a badass! Bring it! Bring it!
Thank you again.
Yeah, you're a badass.
The third out of those three that I was going to pick out, the next one that I'm going to do, I chose because we decided to do something a little different than what I've been talking about the whole time. Instead of really focusing on the song and restraining ourselves and kind of keeping ourselves within the lines in these little tidy boxes that were meant for songs and albums, on this song we decided to stretch our wings a little bit. With the idea that this was not going to be a single, this wasn't going to be the most popular song on the album. But for me, it has definitely gotten a lot of attention to the drums and the instrumental side of the band. It's a song called Blood of the Scribe. I did this at the Modern Drummer Festival in 2005. Outside of that performance and the 2 or 3 clinics that I did before we got here, the band has never played this song live. We played it in the studio, obviously, but that was the only time that we've ever done it. It just didn't stand up on the album. It didn't fit within the time constraints that we had in the set list. So on this particular song, I don't mean to say that we were all showing off. Maybe the guitar guys were, I don't know what headspace. But for me, the idea on this song was to really bring in as many different influences as I could. I had gotten over the ego trip that I was on the Palaces record and the New American Gospel. And it wasn't really an ego trip. It was based on, again, my insecurities as a player, but I was overplaying constantly. I'd gotten over that. I didn't want to outplay the guys. I didn't even want to outplay the song, even though I knew it was going to be a little more progressive than some of the other songs on the album. What I wanted to do was try and think about all the different stuff that I was listening to, all the different influences that I had coming up as a kid and now that I was listening to as an adult, try to bring as many of those as I could into this song. So this one is Blood of the Scribe. Thanks, guys. Thank you. It's fun playing those songs because they don't often make it into the set list, which means two things. One, they're you never know what's going to happen when I play them. Lots of mistakes, but at the same time, I get that crazy nervous energy where I don't really have the muscle memory built up to do it in my sleep, and it's exciting to play. So I had fun playing those. Thank you. And that song in particular, again, was had a lot to do with me bringing in different influences into what we were trying to write, which I think if there's a secret to maybe the attention that I've received as a drummer, because again, I've been around the world, I've seen it, I'm not oblivious to the fact. I'm far from the most technically skilled guy out there. I think really the reason that I stand out, and again, maybe the secret, I don't know, is listening to other things besides just metal and bringing those ideas into metal. I've noticed everywhere we go, especially in Texas, especially in San Diego. No, this is not necessarily a good thing. Is that there's a trend to be more metal than the next guy, right? And that's fine. I get it. I was that kid. That's Texas. All right. All right. I'll go home. No, but the problem with that is when you have a very closed off system of things that are inspiring you and influencing you to do something, it's very hard to stand out. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? If you're only eating carrots, eventually you turn orange. So the thing that's helped me stand out is to listen to other things, to try to bring them in, to experiment with other types of music, to actively pursue listening to other kinds of music. And I mean, some of the best drummers that I've ever seen play are jazz guys, fusion guys, gospel guys. And that stuff really inspires me to play, because when I watch those guys play, I'm just, like, everything about what I do, it makes sense to me, even though I can't necessarily technically deconstruct it and write it down for you. It makes sense to me, and it's kind of zeros and ones, and it all makes sense in my head. But the jazz guys and the fusion guys, gospel guys, they play in this crazy gray area that I just don't understand. So it's really inspiring to see somebody like that. And in fact, there's a band called Periphery from Delaware. I got them on a show that we were doing in DC, and I was a big fan of the band, and I met their drummer, Matt. And Matt and I have been spending some time together, and he's a fusion guy, and he's been showing me some different fusion stuff, so I'm hoping to be able to come prepared for the next Lamb of God record with some new chops. And I'm always, interested in trying to continue to evolve in that way. And in fact, the best metal drummer that I've ever seen play is a guy named Gene Hoglan. We did the As the Palaces Burn record in Vancouver, and Gene lived on the couch and I lived on the floor below Gene, which is a very dangerous place to be. But he and I would talk about drums and just kind of whatever was going on that day, and I learned from Gene that when he started, he took lessons to be a funk player, and he basically sped that up and brought it into metal, and that to me is why he stands out. His style is very unique, and it's very easy to pinpoint him in the different bands that he's been in. So again, expose yourself to as much as you can, bring that in, and that's not necessarily for drummers. I know not everybody in here is a drummer. You might be a guitar player, a singer, or an artist. Anything that you do that's creative, it's obviously better to expose yourself to everything that's out there so you can bring that in, make it your own, create your own voice with it. So the next two I'm going to do are off of the album Sacrament that came out in 2006. This album hit number 8 on the Billboard charts, and it also got our first Grammy nomination, which was very cool. Again, it opened up all kinds of markets around the world. And the thing, though, I played it earlier, the song Redneck. That kind of led the way for the album. It was like the single, and that's great. But it really overshadowed a lot of stuff on that album. And if you had asked me before this clinic tour what my favorite album was, I would have said probably the Palaces record. And listening back to it now, I can hear, if I try to be objective about it and try not to let myself know that I'm the drummer on that album. I'm pretty impressed by the drumming on that album. Again, it was a bit self-indulgent, it was a bit over the top, and I wasn't playing for the songs, I was just playing for myself. But as a drummer, it sounds cool. But on Sacrament, Redneck really stole the thunder of a lot of stuff that was going on underneath that. And so recently, as I dug into the different albums and what I could bring along to play and try to find some stuff that wasn't on our set lists, I dug back into the Sacrament album, and there's some really, really great stuff on there, some really dark stuff that we never got to play live, that just never stood up because of the popular attention that Redneck got, and because of this new light that the band was thrown into, where if we were an opening slot and only got 40 minutes to play, there were certain songs we kind of had to play. So there was a lot left off of the Sacrament record. And the first one I'm going to do, and this also has a lot to do with, at the time, going on from the Ashes record, I continued to develop my style, continued to listen to different things, develop myself, try to push myself to the next level and bring different things into the project. This particular song, called More Time to Kill, I was listening to a lot of progressive kind of fusion stuff and stuff that was dealing with different time signatures and trying to wrap my head around that. Not having a theory base, it was really very difficult to do. But what happened was the guys came in, and on Sacrament, even more so than Ashes of the Wake, we were really focused on the song over our individual agenda. So in this case, the guys came in with this crazy, really unconventional guitar riff that was supposed to be the verse, and I felt like I could tell our producer at the time, Machine, he'd worked with a lot of industrial bands, he had worked with Prodigy, very song-based, very kind of, not simple, but the kind of songs that make everybody move a little bit. So that was his kind of, I could tell that was he was going for. And as the guys brought in what would have worked just fine on the Palaces record, I could see the stink eye coming from the producer when they started to bring in that kind of stuff. So I felt like this was an opportunity for me to try and help pull the guys, rein them in a little bit, not by changing what they did, but by coming up with something that helped the song flow a little bit. And it's still a really unconventional song, but I think partially, at least, in help to, or what I brought to it in helping it, ended up keeping it on the album. So that's why I chose that one. I'm going to do two in a row. The next one is a song that the band never played, got overshadowed by everything else, but is for me, it's one of the most fun songs, Lamb of God, that I have played in the band since the beginning. A song called Requiem. This song, I mentioned earlier that when I grew up, I was listening to the different kinds of stuff I was listening to, like crossover, punk, and early metal stuff. And there's part of this song that has that really aggressive, to me, that crossover vibe to it, but it still has some of the maturity and the songwriting that had developed over the time, the now 12, 13 years that we had been a band. So there's signature moves in it combined with this kind of early punk crossover feel. And in the middle of the song, there's this really droning, I know I'm giving you a lot to remember, I'm sorry. There's this really droning part that the guys brought in, and I wanted to extend it as long as possible because I noticed as I got older and jaded and cold-hearted and never found anything fun anymore, that I really wasn't getting the same kind of vibe out of music that I used to when I was a kid. And when I used to crank up early Megadeth albums, you make me want to drive fast and punch stuff and play the drums and play guitar, drink beer or whatever. Now, I was still getting that. I mean, aggressive music still made me aggressive, but I noticed when I would go to see movies that they could, with the score of the movie, they could kind of elicit these emotions that otherwise I wouldn't get. If I was watching a sitcom at home or whatever, it just wouldn't happen. So I started spending a lot of time buying movie scores and trying to understand how different moods in music affect the way people listen to it, or affect how people are affected, or change how people are affected when they listen to it. So I tried to come up with a beat in the middle of that song, the second one I'm going to do, Requiem, in the middle, that kind of sits back and has this kind of pulse rhythm and allows the suspense to build, if it were a movie, I guess, and then kind of pop back out in little action scenes. I know that sounds crazy, and it is, but that's what you get. So I'll do these More Time to Kill and then Requiem. I'll be back, guys.